So good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to the webinar Fighting AMR in Animals, Experiences and Progress from the Field. My name is Luca Guardabassi. I'm professor in One Health Antimicrobial Resistance. Obviously, I have a strong interest in antimicrobial resistance, and I have the pleasure to chair this webinar. A few instructions before we start. First of all, I would like to remark that this webinar is organized by 4 projects funded by the European Commission: AVANT, ROADMAP, Healthy Livestock, and I don't remember, sorry, the name of the 4th one. Someone can help me?
DISARM.
DISARM. That's a sign of bad aging. Apologies for that. The webinar is structured in 2 parts, and each of them will be followed by a QA session. You are kindly asked to switch off the microphone and the camera, and the questions should be written in the chat, so don't use the microphone for that. So at the end of each session, we will open the chat and see what kind of questions you have. I have to inform you that this webinar is being recorded for future use. And I think that's it. We will try to contact you by email after the end of the webinar to provide you with links on how to access the recording. So I think we can move on with the first speaker, which is a very good colleague and friend of mine, Jan Varten, who is a veterinarian, but a very special veterinarian. He has been for many years the executive director of the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, FVE, until the end of last year. But he's still involved in different EU projects on behalf of the FVE. So Jan, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luca, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon to everyone who is following this webinar. As Luca already said, my name is Jan Varten, and in the next 10 minutes or so, I will give you an update about antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance developments in the agricultural sector over the last 10 years. Can I have the next slide? I would like to start this presentation with some words about the problem that we are speaking about, antimicrobial resistance. In fact, the problem is infectious diseases. They are a big threat to the health and welfare of animals and people. So the discovery of antimicrobials and antibiotics in the 20th century have been a great breakthrough to fight these diseases. However, the point is that every time when you expose bacteria to an antibiotic, there are some individual bacteria that are more able to cope with the antibiotic, and these are the bacteria that will survive. And these are also the bacteria that will grow a new population of bacteria more resistant to the antibiotic. And especially diseases caused by these bacteria, especially in particular when they are resistant to more antibiotics, so the multi-resistant bacteria, they can cause big problems because the diseases they cause are very difficult to treat. They cause a lot of sickness, a lot of suffering, and they cause also a lot of costs. So that is the issue we want to speak about. Can I have the next one? And this issue is not really a new one. Here you see a quote by Alexander Fleming, the man who discovered penicillin in 1928. As I already said, an enormous breakthrough for which he received the Nobel Prize in 1945. And when he accepted the Nobel Prize, he already warned for the fact that bacteria, microbes can become resistant to the drug, and that will be then it will be difficult to treat them. Can I have the next one? Fortunately, we have learned a lot about how resistance emerges and how it is spread. And with this knowledge about emergence and spread of antimicrobial resistance, we also know more about how to mitigate these risks. And I think one of the important things to mitigate the risk, of course, is good animal husbandry and disease prevention, for example, by vaccination. In general, we have to reduce the risk of unnoticed spread of bacteria over the farm, good biosecurity, good hygiene, all that kind of things. We also have to reduce the use of antibiotics, so less antibiotics, less exposure of bacteria, less resistance. And if we use antibiotics, we should be sure that we choose the right one, that we administer it in the right way to the right animals, so we don't use more than necessary. This is about risk mitigation in theory, but then the question is, what do we do with that in practice? Can I have the next one? So important things to achieve our goals in practice are, listed here, collaboration. I think it's very important that everyone who has an impact on antimicrobial resistance or is impacted by antimicrobial resistance should work together at local, national or international level. For example, in the Healthy Livestock project, but also in the other projects, we work together with different partners from different countries throughout the EU. And especially in Healthy Livestock, we also work together with partners from China. The other thing that's very important is raising awareness. Everyone should be aware of the risk and be aware of what can be done and how everyone can contribute to solving the problem. That's in fact everything where this week, World Antibiotic Awareness Week, is about. And the third point I want to mention here is monitoring, record keeping, reporting, databases. If we don't monitor, if we don't see how many antibiotics are used, where they are used, for which purpose they are used, in fact, we are working in the dark and we don't know what we are doing. And then, of course, we have good farming practices, good veterinary practices. Can I have the next one? Another important instrument to address the risk of antimicrobial resistance is a new veterinary medicines regulation. It was decided in 2018 and it will become applicable in January 2022. And being a regulation, it will be direct applicable in all the member states. And it contains articles about responsible use of antimicrobials, ban on preventative treatment, restrictions on use as a control treatment, the possibility to reserve certain antimicrobials for human use. You may remember the lively debate in the European Parliament a few weeks ago about this, and also the obligation for EU countries to collect data on sales and use. So that again is about monitoring. How many antimicrobials do we sell and how much do we use? Can I have the next one? When preparing for this presentation, when I was thinking about the use of antimicrobials, I looked in the ESVAC report that was available at that moment. And I read that between 2011 and 2018, the total sales has dropped by 34%, which is a big step forward. And what's even more important is that especially the critically important medicines for human use have also been reduced in the animal world. But, can I have the next one? That report that I just showed you was followed up by a new one yesterday. So this morning I added an extra slide. I corrected my slide of yesterday. And what we know since yesterday is that it's not 34% drop in total sales, but 43%. So an extra step forward is made. Also, the use of the critically important antimicrobials for human use has been reduced further. So I think we are continuing on the right way. Although I also have to say that we are not there yet, but we are going all together in the right direction. Can you have the next one? Another important observation is that over the years, the use of antimicrobials in animals has become lower. If you look at the total use of milligram per kilogram of estimated biomass in animals than in people. In the beginning, we were over what was used in in people, but now in the veterinary field we are below that. Also a good development. Can I have the next one? Speaking about antimicrobial use and reduction about antimicrobial use is nice, but of course the real thing is, does it really produce antimicrobial resistance? And there we also have good news. In the joint report of the EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, and the ECDC, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, you can read that for certain bacteria we see a reduction of antimicrobial resistance against certain antimicrobials. So good news. These outcomes is very encouraging, and I think we should all be inspired by these observations to go forward. Because, as I already said, can I have the next one? Good progress is made, but we are not there yet. We still have to make further progress to come to the final goal. And for that reason, EU has started funded programs to find better ways, new solutions against antimicrobial resistance. And 4 of these projects have joined forces and are working together. Luca already mentioned them. It's the project ROADMAP, rethinking of antimicrobial decision systems in the management of animal production. AVANT, alternatives to veterinary antimicrobials. Healthy livestock, tackling antimicrobial resistance through improved livestock health and welfare. And DISARM, disseminating innovative solutions for antibiotic resistance management. And we have joined forces, our forces, and together we all work in the same direction. And in the next part of this webinar, you will get further information on these projects. And by that, I hand back to Luca again. Thank you for your attention and wish you a good webinar.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this introduction on how AMU and AMR have developed in the agricultural sector over the last 10 years. As mentioned in the title of the webinar, one unique feature of the webinar is that we will hear voices from the field, experiences from the field. So in the next minutes, there will be space for 4 testimonials, different professionals who will tell their experience about AMU and AMR in the field. And the first one is David Cotton. David is a farmer who runs a dairy farm in Somerset, southwest England. And he likes, the name of the farm is Bridge Farm, and he likes to define his farm as a strategic dairy farm. So this is a very special farm. So let's hear from David why this farm is strategic.
I think looking at antibiotic use and what we've done and what we could do in the future, I think when we look back to what we were doing with antibiotic use, we were throwing antibiotics at everything. Every cow that we were drying off got a full antibiotic treatment. Anything with the slightest hint of an illness got something like a Naxel or an XNL. If it had a fowl in the foot, it would get XNL rather than a pen strep. So actually the products we were using would, you could say that we might have been using less antibiotic, but we're using ones that were critically important in the food chain. So actually we've gone back to some of the old-fashioned antibiotics, which still work. So, you know, why should we go away from some of those? If you're measuring antibiotic use in weight of antibiotic, we could be using more, which is always the challenge when you come to statistics. But it's important to say that actually what we're using are ones that have been around for centuries and have been proven to be safe and not be a food chain issue. Some of these newer ones, there are question marks over that. So we've become much more conscious of what we use. We've also, there's less available than there were, of course. There's less products that make it onto market than there were. We also don't know what's on the market anymore because it's all done through the vets. So we're much more reliable on the vets to tell us what products we can and can't use. Whereas before, it was in all the press. There were adverts everywhere. There aren't anymore. So our knowledge in some ways become more limited on what we can use ourselves. We have to find out from the professionals. So we have to have a trust in the professionals to be able to be on the same journey as us with that, to make sure we're not using these products, and that's important too.
So after the testimonial by David, we will now hear another testimonial from Lars Peter Sørensen. Lars is a genetic development manager at Vikings Genetics, which is a breeding company here in Denmark. He is responsible for breeding plans for bull selection. So please start the video.
So this is just a overview of the genetic trend. So that means improvement in breeding values this is from year 2000 until 2019, so around 20 years. And what we can see here is that we have an improvement in udder health, breeding values for udder health of around 20 index units. And at the same time, we also have about the same improvement, perhaps a bit more in yield or milk yield. So there are improvements in both traits. If you see, okay, what does that mean if you look at cases of mastitis, 20 index units, how much is that? It can actually be shown that it is around 5.4 cases of mastitis, of, well, 4.4% units less mastitis since year 2000 until now. So it is, in our eyes, a very large effect through breeding. And what is we need to remember is that what you change during genetics is permanent and it is cumulative. And as I said here, the difference between 2001 and 19 is 20 units, and that is more or less equal to 5.4% units less mastitis. And this is just an overview of what we have seen over the years. You have the graphs on the left side here is just the number of treatments per 100 cows in 2008. So that would be the blue bars, and 2018, that would be the green bars. And this is in Danish Holstein, and it is shown per lactation. The first 4 bars is in first lactation. It's divided into 2 periods, an early period and a late period. And then you have second and third lactation also. And as you can see here, the number of treatments goes up as the lactation number goes up. But if you look at the difference between these, the number of treatments in 2008 and 2008, and try to convert that into used antibiotics and also into non-wasted milk, you get the numbers on the right in red here. So it can actually be shown that just the difference between these numbers can be converted into 4.3 ton of antibiotics that has not been used. So I think combined breeding and better management has had a very clear effect on the use of antibiotics in the Nordic countries, or in Denmark in this case.
I would like to share my experience of more than 40 years of practice. First of all, I would talk about
Yeah, I would like to introduce the next testimonial, another special veterinarian, Thierry Chambon, special because he's vice president of FVE, but he's also a French veterinary practitioner specialized in poultry and companion animals. Please, let's start the video.
I would like to share my experience of more than 40 years of practice. First of all, I would talk about swine production. I remember when I was working in swine, the best result without any antibiotics was found in farms where it was only a selection system with the low density animals and with very good hygiene practices. And we didn't need any antibiotics to have the best results in production. Second, in avian production, during the years we took in account the evolution of the breeds, the evolution of the hygiene of practice by farmers, and our advice given to farmers improved a lot the welfare and the health of animals, and of course, in consequences, the consumption of antibiotics. And my last experience is in companion animals. We used to prescribe and inject antibiotics when you do some really daily surgery like castration or ovariectomy of cats, and now with good hygienic measures, with sterility, we don't use any antibiotic anymore. When you treat urinary tract problems, we used to prescribe antibiotics systematically. Now it's not the case. Most of the cases we have problem with stress, and we don't need any antibiotic to treat that kind of pathology. The same in dermatitis problem. We used to prescribe a lot of antibiotics to treat only local infections. Now we have some tools like blue lamp to treat this local dermatitis without any antibiotic prescription. So that's why I can give a testimony about the decrease of the consumption of antibiotics in daily veterinary practices.
So Thierry mentioned companion animals during his testimonial, and another perspective about the importance of AMR in companion animals is the one from the pet owners. And the next testimonial is a pet owner, but not only. This is Jill Moss. Jill is the founder and president of the Bella Moss Foundation, which is the UK's only non-profit charity dedicated to people and pets with infection.
Bella was my companion. She was a 10-year-old Samoyed, chasing a squirrel like other dogs do, but sadly she ruptured the cruciate ligament. And what should have been routine surgery turned into an MRSA infection, which went misdiagnosed and unfortunately became systemic, leading to her death and suffering. And at the time there was no information, the veterinary surgeries didn't know about it, and unfortunately I contracted the same strain. So Bella had to be put to sleep, and it made me realise that there was an issue here that needed addressing, that the transmission of MRSA in 2004, crossing from animals to humans, was something that we needed to be concerned about. So I set up a website, and then I was inundated by vets, by pet owners, and the whole thing just went completely out of proportion. Well, following Bella's death, there was a lot of media attention about my case because she was the first dog to have contracted MRSA, and I contracted it from her. That set off a lot of interest in the press. Following that, I made contact with some people in the veterinary profession and the academic world, and it seemed like that there was quite a lack of information, and together I joined a DEFRA committee. We all decided to form a sort of board of trying to bring this, if you like, bring it forward, not just into the public domain, but the veterinary profession and the scientific world. And that led to the first scientific conference in MRSA on animals, which took place in 2006, followed by more conferences. And in 2009, we actually did in association with the Royal Society of Medicine in London, a One Health conference looking at antimicrobial resistance, the impact of that between humans and animals. So really following Bella's death, and it's a wonderful legacy to her, so much has been done to bring this issue forward, and not just in the academic world and the veterinary profession, but in the general public, so that we're all aware of the things that we can do to keep animals and people safe. We do lots of things. We split our attention, firstly for veterinary practice, where we provide, and everything we do is free. We do not charge. Even our advisors do everything for free. So we provide infection control guidelines for practices, which are developed by our veterinary board of directors, and a clinical self-audit app, because it's really important to look at your practice and see the areas that have room for improvement. So if you take our self-audit app test, that will flag up the areas that need improvement. And all of these resources have been developed and produced by veterinary professionals for no charge. And we do not charge anybody because we're passionate about education. So we also do CPD, online CPD and webinars for veterinary practices. We've got a clinical board of directors who give up their time freely to discuss cases with practices if they need support. And I help with the education for pet owners. So a few of us at the foundation will do separate projects for the general public, not just the general public, but people working in farming, people working in animal care, anybody working with animals that needs to know more about infection control. And, you know, this is really a key issue now, and coming out of the world that we've just been in, it's quite pertinent to keep that message going about, you know, hand hygiene and practicing good hygiene in every environment, because everybody wants to prevent the spread of diseases between humans and animals. Resistant infections was primarily what we're dealing with, but now COVID has come into the forefront of it all. Bella Moss Foundation's takeaway message is today, more than ever, we need to tackle the transmission of diseases between humans and animals, including COVID-19. Because good hygiene benefits us all, and together we can beat the bugs.
So now the first session of the webinar has ended, but there is room for questions from the audience. I don't see any questions on the chat, but you are still in time. There are a couple of minutes if you have any questions. And if not, maybe we can have a longer QA session at the end of the seminar, of the second part of the seminar. So I'd like to start then the second part, which is dedicated to different approaches and angles to contribute to antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance reduction. And there are two presenters, and then who will be followed by 4 testimonials from the field. And the 2 presenters are actually both involved in the organization of this webinar. The first one is Fanny Badouin. Please, apologies if I mispronounce your name. And Fanny is a molecular biologist who is currently doing a doctoral research on the socioeconomics of antimicrobial use in livestock production as part of the ROADMAP project. ROADMAP is one of the 4 projects organizing this webinar. Please, Fanny, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Luca. Can you see the screen? It should be all set normally.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, indeed, you're going to discuss different approaches and angles, and I'm going to do this via a problem tree. So for the ROADMAP project, we are analyzing different production systems with different species. And one thing that we are doing within the project is to sit down with all the actors of a certain production system, and then we are discussing why antimicrobials are used to produce animals. And so we start with the main questions. Why do we use a lot of antimicrobials? and some answers are provided. And then we continue to question these answers until we find the root causes for the high antimicrobial use. So far, this was done for the Danish organic dairy sector and pig sector, but also for the Belgian intensive pig and vehicle sectors. So what I did is that I went through the 4 problem trees that were thus drawn by actors from these production systems, and I looked for similarities between them. So here now you can see a simplified and global problem tree. So these are issues that are common to most of the 4 case studies. So I'm going to walk you through this global problem tree. So why is there a high antimicrobial use? Well, one common, I don't know why my slides are not switching. Okay, now it's working. So one reason for high antimicrobial use is that there is a poor animal health, and that can be due to genetics, to poor nutrition, or to poor gut health. Now, why is there a poor animal health? Well, this can be because there is a poor animal health management that sometimes is compensated with antimicrobial use. And reasons for this can be contradictory advice that's given to the farmers, the lack of preventive management, being, for example, a poor biosecurity, or the role of the veterinarian that's sometimes hard to change. In some countries, veterinarians make money by selling medicine, but they would like to switch to a more consultant role, and it's not always easy to do so. Now, why is there a poor animal health management? Well, there are also reasons for that. One being limited knowledge, and this can be seen as very broad. It can go from employees that lack knowledge to the oversupply of alternatives. There is a lot of alternatives on the market, and it's not always easy to choose which one would fit your farm. Still the question, what is the real contribution to global AMR of livestock production? The fact that there are also no alternatives with the same characteristics as antibiotics. In fact, there are insufficient studies on effectiveness and economics, especially for alternatives, and then the lack of AI technologies. Now, another reason for a poor animal health management can be the perceived barriers for change. And here you can have inadequate institutions, and institutions or rules, and they can be laws or things that were set via contracts, but also habits or the way you're doing your business. Other reasons can be the fear for sanitary and financial impact if you switch to alternatives. The fact that you can immediately see the results of an antibiotic treatment versus the fact that if you use preventive methods, it might take longer before you see results. And then finally, the perception that change can be expensive. Now, a final reason that was identified within the case studies for poor animal health management are economic issues. And here we are dealing with the fact that it's hard to get an added value for a lower antimicrobial use, that everyone's working within a global market that's setting the prices, that there can be a poor collaboration between food chain actors, and that antibiotics are cheap, especially compared to other products such as vaccines. So this was the problem 3, and now Nicolas is going to explain you how the 4 projects are actually working towards solutions for these common issues that were risen by field actors.
Thank you very much, Fanny. I hope that everyone can hear me. What was fascinating to us when Fanny started to draw this map, so to say, based on field knowledge, field actors' perception of the issue that matters to them regarding antimicrobial use and how to reduce them, that we realized as well. I mean, it wasn't that much a surprise anyway, but that our 4 projects actually do cover quite a large range of the issues that have been spotted by the field actors as either barriers or levers, basically, to encourage change in antimicrobial use towards more prudent use, for example. So we are here 4 projects, and if I have to basically try to explain them or that two of these projects are rather focused on developing technical solution and innovation for reducing antimicrobial use, while two other projects tends to rather focus on socioeconomic innovation and change. So this is why we tend to cover a large range of the issue Fanny already exposed to you. So the first project, for example, if you could, Fanny, move the slides.
I did, but I think there is a delay.
All right.
Sorry.
Is, I guess, the AVANT project. So I hope that the slides are gonna move shortly. But the project AVANT is basically dedicated to develop and test alternatives. Now you can see it to antimicrobials through several basically types of products. Could be gut microbiome modulators, could be alternative veterinary medicine such as phage-based therapy, or either as well immunostimulants that could come by injectable or feed additives, for example. And you could see that this project tends to tackle issues that have been spotted in the field of related to these poor animal health issues, or the limited knowledge in particular on alternatives to antibiotics. Then we have a second project, which is also based on the development of a, let's say, technical solution, which is Healthy Livestock, which covers other aspects, basically, of the issue that we have basically perceived. First of all, the lack of preventive management, in particular the biosecurity, which is one of the main dimensions that Healthy Livestock is working on. The poor gut health, trying as well to have animals that are more resilient to disease, and of course as well this lack of technology. Healthy Livestock is also working a lot on the development of new vaccine strategies. So basically these two first projects tend to cover several aspects that are related to the lack of new technology that could help us, and when I say us, I mean farmers, I mean vets, I mean the whole industry, to use less antimicrobials. Then come two other projects that are more focused on the socioeconomic aspects of change, because what we know and that we have also observed is that no change is conceivable or doable if we don't tackle as well all the socioeconomic environment in which people, I mean field actors, are working. So the DISARM project is a network that is trying to connect many field actors, including farmer, vets, technicians, industries, and so on, to try to share knowledge and examples of strategy that are basically working to reduce antimicrobials. And on that, of course, they have a lot of innovative solution that and knowledge that they share on how tackle with the lack of preventive management regarding animal health, the issues regarding the new role of veterinarians that Fanny was pointing out as well, that are turning into a role that is more a consultant's role and towards more preventive approach to veterinary medicine and to animal health. And of course, all those issues of how knowledge could be shared, could be disseminated, so that all actors of the field of animal health and all types of employee of the different businesses, of course, could have shared knowledge of the issue and what can be done basically to keep going towards this process of encouraging prudent use of antimicrobial use. And last but not least, the ROADMAP project is another European project which is also tackling mostly the issues through socioeconomic approaches and also participatory approaches, which is rather focused on how the perceived barriers for change could be overcome, which is also focusing on economic and sociological issues. So, for example, of how to value products that have been raised without antimicrobials, how basically our institutions and our antimicrobial resistance policy can support change in the various sectors that have been now implemented quite a lot of measures to reduce antimicrobial use. And as well at the farm level, the ROADMAP project is also basically working on changing the role of vets and farmers. So I guess basically this is it, and now we're gonna move towards as well some testimonials that I hope are going to give you some grounded types of experience that we can discuss about in a few minutes.
Thank you, Nicholas, and my apologies, I didn't have the opportunity to introduce you. Nicholas is a sociology researcher at AMR in France. He works on animal health policy and the veterinary profession, including history of veterinary drugs, market, and policies against AMR in France as well as in Europe. Thank you very much. You mentioned AVANT among the 4 projects organizing this webinar during your presentation, and the first testimonial is actually one of the partners in AVANT. So I have the pleasure to introduce Verity and Sattler, who is a scientist at Biomin. Biomin is an Austrian company specialized in animal nutrition, and Verity will explain the role of Biomin in the AVANT project to improve animal nutrition and health.
So there's again a little delay, I'm sorry. I'm waiting for the video to come.
We have an alternative link.
Yeah, I'll just...
that is not embedded in the presentation.
Yeah, it's the screen switching is not happening on my laptop for some reason. So I'll just stop sharing and just share the video immediately.
Do you want me to present the next testimonial and then you try to sort out the issue with Verity, this video?
They are all in the same, yeah, but okay. Now it should work, I think. Can you see it? Well, yes. You should see it now.
Yeah, try to launch it. Perfect.
It's fine?
Perfect.
Treatment options against enterotoxigenic E. coli infections in pigs are still very limited at present. Colistin and zinc oxide are still being used in different countries, but are becoming more and more limited because of the risk of selection and transmission of clinically relevant antimicrobial resistances from animals to humans. To my knowledge, I think there are also no real effective vaccines available against ETEC. So we really urgently need solutions to treat these diseases. So Biomin is involved in 2 different research areas. The one is dealing about investigating and improving the composition of the basal diet of the animals. And the second area, which I am more involved in, is about gut microbiota modulation. My main research interest at Biomin is to find solutions how to improve animal gut health, specifically by developing feed additives based on probiotic bacterial strains. When speaking about the development of a probiotic product, the most challenging part, I think, is the identification and selection of the right strains. So each strain needs to be well characterized, it needs to be safe to use. Of course, it needs to show efficacy when administered to the animal via the feed. So it also needs to be, to some extent, very stable in the feed. And of course, it also needs to meet criteria to be able to be produced in an economic way. On top of all that, the combination of the right strains can also be very challenging. Combining strains creates some kind of synergy, which can be a positive but also negative way. So the combination of the right strains and then also the right formulation and concentration into one final product is really challenging and not easy to overcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Mona Gersbeck and this bit is...
Sorry, the next one already started. Luca, can you introduce this one?
Oh, yes, of course.
Sorry.
No problem. So the next testimonial is Mona Jasper. She's a researcher from Utrecht University, and she will explain her research on how to reduce antimicrobial use by new hatching system.
About a small study on the effects of hatching system on broiler activity measured individually by an ultra-wideband tracking system. We know that conventional hatching in the hatchery can affect broiler health, resilience and welfare. Therefore, alternative concepts have been developed, such as providing chickens with early nutrition in the hatchery or hatching eggs on farm. However, information on the resilience and welfare of chickens hatched in these systems is limited. Changes in broiler activity are a promising indicator for various resilience and welfare threats. For instance, lower activity levels have been associated with sickness and lameness. By the help of modern sensor technology, it is possible to record activity patterns automatically. The aim of this study was to assess the effects of hatching system on broiler activity in general and after the challenging situation of vaccination. Therefore, a proof-of-principle experiment was performed with chickens that hatched either conventionally in the hatchery, in a system which provided feed and water in the hatcher, or on farm. They were reared in 3 floor pens in a room in which an ultra-wideband tracking system was installed. The birds were tracked with active tags from day 50 to day 34 for 4 hours during the light phase. At day 28, all chickens were vaccinated against infectious bronchitis. The target variable was distance moved per hour. During the 3rd week of life, hatchery-hatched chickens moved less than hatchery-fed and on-farm hatched chickens, whereas there was no difference among all 3 groups in week 4 and 5. To analyze the effects of vaccination, the mean distances moved were summarized for 3 days before and 3 days after the challenge. There was no difference among the groups before the challenge. However, thereafter, hatchery-hatched chickens showed higher levels of activity, whereas chickens from the 2 alternative systems showed a decline in activity. Further research is needed to understand what this means for broiler resilience and welfare precisely. Thank you for your attention. If you are interested in more details on this study, please visit our virtual poster here at the UFO conference. For more on performance and welfare of chickens from the 3 hatching systems, you should have a look at our recently published papers.
And now we move from the Netherlands to the UK, and the next testimonial is Mark Farrell. He's the dairy herd manager at Gronsbanor Farms in the UK, and he will explain the use of commercial plate to identify bacterial pathogens and guide antibiotic therapy in mastitis.
If we do get a case of mastitis now, we first of all take a sample. It takes us 24 hours to get the result of that sample. So we sample it up and plate it up using these plates here. So we take the sample, we smear on a bit of milk, and then this gives us results 24 hours later. If there's no growth there, we know that antibiotics can't cure this cow. But if we do get growths, small growths or different types of mastitis, we know what kind of mastitis we are treating, and we can target that particular mastitis with the drugs required. So out of what we're plating at the moment, I would say that 50% of them don't require any antibiotics at all. So it's reducing our antibiotic usage by a lot. And we're running at about between 15 and 20% mastitis rates on this farm at the moment. So it's a big saving for us. Everything's recorded on these sheets. So the cow's identification, the date, the quarter that was infected, who plated the sample, and what the results were, and did it need treating or not. So for treating the cows that have no antibiotic growth, we can just go in with anti-inflammatories, We can use drenches, we can give them hypertonics or electrolytes and things like that, just help them get over that sort of mastitis, but they do normally cure themselves with just a little bit of help there.
And then Lucas, we have the fourth testimonial.
Yeah, and it's actually a couple, Jeanette van der Ven and Martin van der Bosch. Jeanette is a goat farmer, and Martin is the vet on her farm. And they will explain how a multi-actor approach helped to improve animal health and reduce antimicrobial use on their farm.
Goedemiddag, welkom op ons melkgeitenbedrijf. Ik ben Jeanette van der Ven en ik wil laten zien dat een driehoeksoverleg bij kan dragen aan een gezondere bedrijfsvoering en een gezonde veestapel. Een driehoeksoverleg is het overleg tussen voerleverancier, de dierenarts en de boer of boerin. Er kunnen natuurlijk ook meer partners aansluiten. Er worden allerlei onderwerpen besproken, zoals diergezondheid, melkproductie en de voeding van de geiten. Een van de zaken waar we ook over spreken is het vaccinatiebeleid.
Vaccineren tegen para-TBC zorgen voor een betere gezondheid van de gehele veestapel. Zeker ook op latere leeftijd.
We maken ook afspraken over het wisselen van bedrijfskleding tussen de verschillende leeftijdsgroepen van de geiten. We kijken naar de conditie van de geiten en naar het voer.
Voer is lekker fris. Voldoende prik, denk ik. Zeker. Als je goed in je handen knijpt, dan voel je dat er voldoende structuur in zit.
Een smakelijk rantsoen is belangrijk voor een goede weerstand en dus goede gezondheid van onze geiten. In het driehoeksoverleg worden ook de doelstellingen voor het komende jaar bepaald. Dat kan gaan over de productie van de dieren, de voeding, de kostprijs, maar natuurlijk ook de diergezondheid.
Gedurende het jaar stellen we doelstellingen samen met de voerleverancier, dierenarts en de veehouders op het gebied van diergezondheid, dierziekteincidentie, uitval en het gebruik van medicijnen, de dierdagdosering. Daarbij maken we ook een plan om die doelstellingen te bereiken. En tijdens de bedrijfsbezoeken dan kijken we regelmatig naar hoe het gaat, stellen we bij en maken we een nieuwe actieplan waar nodig.
En dat alles draagt bij aan een betere diergezondheid, betere technische resultaten en daarmee dus ook verminderd antibiotica gebruik op ons bedrijf.
And I guess this was it for these sessions, for the testimonials.
Yep, and now it's time for the final QA session. I noticed that there are actually a few questions from the audience, and so let me open the chat. One of them was about where is it? If there are any similar projects addressing AMR and AMU in aquaculture, and to the best we have answered on the chat that to the best of our knowledge there are not current project of this type, but there is a NEU call entirely dedicated to health and welfare in aquaculture, where the reduction of antimicrobial use is actually mentioned, with deadline in February, and the link has been provided in the chat to access information on this call. So there will be soon at least one project. I don't remember if one or multiple projects will be funded as part of this call. Then there was another question on about the situation in the UK. Basically, the question was, after the Brexit, will there be any more initiatives to fight antimicrobial resistance in the veterinary sector? Maybe someone from the UK should answer these questions, but as you have seen, 2 of the 8 testimonials were actually farmers from the UK. So the fact that the UK are no longer part of the European Union doesn't mean that veterinarians and farmers are not engaged in the fight against antimicrobial resistance. So my
Maybe I may add something, Luca. This is Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
Yes, since Brexit, UK is no longer involved in this EU projects, but that doesn't mean that we don't communicate with UK. I think there's still a lot of exchange of information between the UK and the EU at different levels. I also think, for example, within the Federation of Veterinarians, UK is still a very prominent member. And in our meetings, we discuss a lot about antimicrobial use, antimicrobial resistance. We exchange best practices, etc. And besides that, UK has also its own programs on responsible use of medicines in animals. So although the political situation has changed, the situation in the field where we speak between different stakeholders, farmers, veterinarians, researchers, etc., continues, and I think that is to the benefit of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. There was another question. Basically, Helene was asking if the slides will be available after this webinar. As I mentioned in the beginning, the recording of the webinar will be available and a link will be sent to all participants by email. I'm not sure about the slides. Does anyone in the organizing committee know if the slides will be available? If not, maybe we can answer these questions in the mail that we will send with the link of the video. I don't see any other questions. There are still a couple of minutes available. Jan,
Luca, I think there was one question about how the relationship, the relation between the feed supplier, the veterinarian, and the farmer is established, whether it is through a contract or how that actually happens.
Yeah, I tried to reply in the chat to this very interesting question, and actually I didn't know the answer for this specific example that we saw in the video, but I just replied that I guess at least in two of our projects in DISARM and in ROADMAP, we have kind of we are in the way to establish that the contractual relationship, so basically the economic ties between the farmers and various advisors or even providers are key actually to change behaviors. We have examples on the development of preventive approaches to animal health, for example, that tends to rely quite a bit on the change in the business models of veterinarians and the economic relationship between vets and their clients, such as, for example, flat rate types of services that tends to encourage and favor the development of new approaches to animal health. So yeah, I mean, your question is a very important one, I think.
Yeah, maybe if there is further information you can retrieve on the type of contract, if there was a contract involved, then can be provided by the email that will be sent to the participants. Apart from that, I don't see any other questions. So Jan, do you have any concluding remarks?
Maybe one comment to this question about initiatives to add AMU and AMR to veterinary education curriculum. I think the curricula are updated regularly, and in many countries there's now much more interest for education young students on this topic. So that's really taken into consideration, especially within the EAEVE, that's the European Association of Establishments for Veterinary Education. So that's taken up there. Then for some concluding remarks, I think we have had a very wide range of people who are involved in fighting antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance. It's very interesting to see how they all, from their own perspective and their own angle, contribute to our common goal. As I said in the introduction, good steps forward have been made, so that's very encouraging, but still there's a lot to do. So let this good step forward be a motivation, inspiration to all of us to continue on the same way, so that we will even have a better SVAC, next SVAC report. Then I would like to thank everyone for joining the webinar. It's very nice to see so many of you joining the webinar and following the whole webinar until now. Thank you very much. As was already mentioned, You will get the email with further information about the recording and the slides. And my last point is let's go together and be sure that no animals stay behind and that they get all the best living conditions and treatment that they can get. Thanks a lot and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this take-home message. And just in relation to what you said about education, I posted a link to a paper that has been recently published about the education of veterinary students on antimicrobial resistance and antimicrobial stewardship for those who are interested. And then I can see that Nicholas has also posted, Nick has posted a link to further elaborate on the discussion that we had before and about the possibility to join actually the community of practice on Facebook organized by the project DISARM. I can see that people are accessing the webinar now. Maybe they are a little bit late because it's time to close. It's 1 minute past 2, so we are actually quite in time, which is quite unusual, having an Italian chairman like me. I really enjoyed the webinar, and I thank again all the speakers, all the organizers, of course, and the 4 projects that are behind this webinar, and of course also the European Commission who funded the project. Without the Commission, the project would have not been here and the webinar would have not existed. Thank you very much to all of you. Bye.
All right. Thank you.